How many times do we have to prove that this doesn't this makes no economic sense? It doesn't work.
Well, the consistency, I would argue, is that the government keeps on growing no matter who's in office. If you
Well, you
look
got
at
a point there. That's true.
well,
You're
if you
right.
look at the way I look at things is very simple. From 1913, when we got the income tax amendment, which gave the federal government the authority
Yeah.
to tax our incomes
And what
directly.
was it, 2% the first year, if I'm
It
right?
was it was only 2% of the population paid it. The rates
Oh,
went from 1% to 7%, and
yeah.
98% of the people that paid. Of course, they loved an income tax because the trade-off was be that the high tariffs were going to be decline would decline, and that happened for a little bit. But then in the 1920s, Harding got elected, and he was and the Republicans took over, and they were high tariff people. And so we were stuck with the high tariffs in the 20s and the income tax, which went up to 77%, by the way, the highest rate during World War One. But having said that, it's
No,
1930.
no, no. Hold it. You told me, and I confirmed this, that the highest rate was in 1960s with 92%, right? Hardly anyone paid it, but that was the highest
I,
rate, right?
I think the highest rate occurred during World War II at 94%.
94%. Okay. All
And
right.
Ronald Reagan said he stopped making movies because every extra dollar he paid, he'd have to pay 94 cents out of every extra dollar he made.
Right.
That's That's an example of what nearly total slavery. Slavery.
Well, it's insanity. That's what it
yeah.
is.
I mean, and in England they had that in the 70s. That's what led to the Thatcher Revolution in '79 when she got elected. The top rate in England was in the 90s. In fact, I remember reading one article saying the maximum tax rate was 103%. That was, you made $1, you had to pay the government $1.03.
I've heard
That's how crazy it was in England. Plus the inflation, the socialism, every major industry was owned by the state. And Thatcher came in and she privatized the economy, and you had a big boom in the 80s and 90s.
So, Murray, that brings you why I have you on here. You had a letter in the Wall Street Journal that they published regarding our young friends, the new socialists.
Yeah,
Why do we keep going through this cycle over and over again? How many times do we have to prove that this doesn't this makes no economic sense? It doesn't work.
Well, they don't learn about this stuff, and they don't read history. They don't know economics. They don't know philosophy. They don't know the law.
You're right, and I'll cut to the choice. They're stupid.
Well, it's not that they're stupid. They're very cagey. They're very cunning. These are the predators in our society who think that they have the power of the state behind them, which can just impose rent control, create government-owned grocery stores in New York City as Mamdani wants. This is crazy stuff.
Oh,
and
totally
on the other side of the ledger, you have the Republicans under Trump taking equity stake in corporations. That's the essence of socialism.
Right.
Government ownership of the means of production. Not 100%, but it's creeping socialism. If a Democratic president is elected down the road, and it could happen as early as 2028, the next presidential election, what if a president says, you know what? We need Medicare for all. We got to get rid of the insurance companies, get rid of the middleman, and just have the federal government run the healthcare system. Or let's have the federal government take equity stake in housing companies, construction companies, so they can build, quote, affordable housing. This is why there's no strategic thinking in Washington, because once the Republicans do it and the Democrats get in, they're going to do the same thing on a grander scale than the Republicans. How about food stores? How about agriculture? Maybe we need to collectivize the farms so we don't have any profits in agriculture. This is what Trump has laid the foundation for in America, is a socialized America. And these dummies don't get it, because once you go down this road, you're just going to continue and expand the welfare state.
I'm going to read a line from your letter here where you said the debate has shifted from whether the government should redistribute wealth to how much redistribution is enough. That's exactly what you're talking about here, isn't it?
There's no question about it. I mean, I could see a Democratic president get elected with a Democratic majority in 2028 and in 2029. Not only if the Democrats take over the House, we know that Trump's going to be impeached. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But putting that aside, if the Democrats win the House and the Senate in 2026 this year, they're going to push legislation, and Trump's going to veto it because you need a 2/3 you need a 2/3 override to get rid of the veto for Trump if the Democrats impose some sort of big government programs, more big government programs. But if they take control in 2028, then it's all bets are off as to what the economy will look like from 2029 going forward. I think we're going to see if this happens, then we're going to see the biggest expansion of the welfare state in our history. It's going to make the New Deal and the Great Society look like conservative programs.
Right, but I want to get back to what you were saying. You know, I said that the kids are stupid, and you said no, that basically what you're saying is that they're not really stupid; they're in it for the power. Is that what I'm getting?
Well, the politicians are in for the power.
Yeah,
Plus,
right. That's what I mean.
The ideology of the welfare state is just a continuation of what Roosevelt and LBJ did, and what Obama did, and Biden. And
hold on, I have to ask you this because this is a really important question for me. Before I forget, what is your feelings about these new Trump accounts for infants?
The idea is something I talked to my students decades ago when I was teaching corporate finance and securities investments. But the government doesn't have any money, but yet the Trump administration is putting $1,000 in each account. I think there are 2-3 million babies born each year. That's $200 million, $300 million. We don't have all that money has to be borrowed. The idea is great. The compounding of money over time will give you a bigger net worth down the road. And I showed my students if a family put away $1,000 a year and other family members chipped in, and an employer may chip in also, which some employers said they're going to do, and that money just stays there for 65 years, we're talking about multi-millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah, I know.
A person's retirement account.
Well, I think just as an example, I think the Trump administration figured out that so your parents, after the $1,000, your parents can add $5,000 a year. Yeah. And if they add $5,000 a year till you're 27, you end up with well more than $750,000 at the end.
It's stunning. It's stunning. This is why Warren Buffett called compound interest one of the great benefits of mankind.
Yeah. Okay. So I have another hypothetical question for you.
Sure.
Would you be kosher with Social Security if it was run the same way? In other words, if it was indexed to the market, so you put a certain amount of money in, or you're forced to every year of your employment, but it was all. I mean, where would it basically go the other direction? Would you be good to that?
First of all, the government has no constitutional authority to create government retirement accounts like Social
I know
Security.
that. I understand that. Right.
Which is not an account. It's basically a promise based upon your lifetime earnings.
Yeah. But what if it actually was an account? That's basically my question.
Well, there was talk that the government would do that when it was established, but people at that time, back in the 1930s, they said, no, this would be socialism. The government having these accounts, they would have voting power in U.S. corporations. We don't want that. We want to separate government from the economy, just as we want to separate government from church and state. We should separate government from education. In other words, the government has no business in this. The primary responsibility of the federal government is to secure the borders and make sure we're safe and secure. They should have no business in any economic activity, except maybe if you want to do local roads or something like that. We have the interstate highway system. The states are responsible for that. Plus, they get federal dollars to help reconstruct the roads over time. But other than that, free people can figure this out, Jim. This is the beauty of free enterprise. Free people know how to invent, innovate, create, and get the goods and services to us. I mean, we have to be amazed at e-commerce, where you can order stuff online, you get it the next day or in 2 days, and it's a seamless process. In the old days, remember, you had to call an 800 number, and it would take maybe a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get a product. Now you can do it overnight. It's just an amazing phenomenon because of technology, the logistics and transportation.
Murray, here's my favorite analogy. Television sets 25 years ago, cathode ray TVs were absolutely enormous. They were just huge, and they cost a fortune. I mean, a big one was in 2000 money, well over $1,000. Now you can buy like a 75-inch TV for $300, and it's 1080p and it's 4K, and the picture's way better.
Well,
You
the
know?
same thing with computers. The computing
Yeah.
power today is like 90, is like the cost of computing has gone down, I think, not more than 99% since my first PC in 1984. I mean, I
Right.
paid $2,000 in 1984. That's a comparable to about let's see,
About
at least
10,000 now.
that. Can you imagine
Yeah.
when you get to 10,000 today? You could probably get almost a
Yeah.
supercomputer.
I
The
did
way
too. In 1989, I spent $2,000 for a computer, and it had a 10 meg hard drive, which at that time was enormous.
Yeah, I had a 30 meg hard drive. I mean,
Oh my God. I'm impressed.
and the printer was a dot matrix printer. It made
Yeah.
a lot of noise. And now you can get a whole printer and great pr- printer and a laptop for probably under $2,000. Under
Oh, easy.
100.
Easy.
I mean,
I just bought my wife a really nice laptop for 500 bucks.
I know it's stunning, and it just shows you technology shows us the way of how to create prosperity that benefits everybody.